में कार्य करने के लिए हम लोग को भी प्रोत्साहित किया जाता है। और मेरे ख्याल हिंदी एक ऐसी भाषा है जिसको सब लोग समझते भी बहुत आसानी से हैं और बोलते भी बहुत आसानी से। और जितना अच्छा अपने विचार कोई भी आदमी हिंदी में व्यक्त कर पाता है उतना शायद अंग्रेजी में नहीं कर पाता है। तो ये एक बहुत जरूरी चीज है कि हम लोग अपनी हिंदी को ना भूलें, चाहे हम विज्ञान में आगे बढ़े चाहे तकनीक में आगे बढ़े, बट हिंदी को हम अपने साथ लेके हमेशा चलें। जहाँ की आज का प्रेजेंटेशन पूरा अंग्रेजी में है, बट शुरुआत हिंदी में करने में कोई बुराई नहीं है। सो मैं
शुरुआत मैम हिंदी में ही करी थी, इसीलिए वो स्लोगन रखा कि आज हिंदी दिवस है। मैं बोलना भूल गया हिंदी दिवस का, बट
आपके स्लोगन को समझ गई मैं कि आपने हिंदी दिवस के उपलक्ष्य में ये बात बोली है। तो शुरुआत आपने कराई दी है तो आगाज अच्छा है तो अंत भी अच्छा होना चाहिए। हालांकि मैं इस पूरे ग्रुप में आई डोंट नो मैं कितने फिट करती हूँ ठीक से, बिकॉज मैं जो बाकी टॉपिक्स देख रही थी उससे टॉपिक मेरा काफी डिफरेंट है। कुछ मेडिसिन के ऊपर है, कुछ मेडिकल साइंस के ऊपर है। तो मुझे मालूम नहीं है कि आपके यहाँ जितने लोग हैं उनमें से कितने लोगों का इंटरेस्ट होगा, बट आई एम श्योर कि लाइफ साइंसेस बायोलॉजी अपनी जीवन शैली जो लोगों की रहती है उसके अंदर तो डेफिनेटली सबका इंटरेस्ट बहुत हाई रहता है। सो आई थिंक वी कैन स्टार्ट। आई विल शेयर माय स्क्रीन, एक मिनट, जस्ट गिव मी 2 seconds.
यस मैम, टेक योर टाइम।
Okay, so is the screen visible?
Yeah, right now it's visible.
It's visible? Okay.
So the stage is yours.
Dhanyavad.
Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, जब डॉक्टर अनु शर्मा she approached me for this talk, I was again asking her. Actually, मुझे FDP से बहुत आइडिया था नहीं, and I had one of my friends did a FDP a few days back, and I was a part of it. But I was very fortunate enough to understand to be a part of this platform because I understood from him that there are teachers who are involved in this training program. And मेरे लिए it is very important कि I am a scientist as well as a HR person, और मैं HRT में ये देखती हूँ कि जो स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं, कुछ स्टूडेंट्स जो होते हैं उनका बेस जो होता है at times I find that there is a complete disconnect between what they are reading and what we are actually using. So it's very nice that the teachers and their teachers are here, and I would request all of them that please, when you are teaching the students, put up as many examples as possible. और आजकल इंटरफेस साइंस इज व्हाट इज इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी, कोई चीज अकेले में तो होता ही नहीं है। सो आपको एक इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच के साथ में बच्चों को चीजें समझानी चाहिए, which would go a long way when they are looking for jobs, internships, and so on and so forth. So, starting with the talk for today, it was nanotechnology role in sustainable healthcare. So when this FDP program is a part of the sustainable development and sustainable technology, and I was just thinking how I can connect my work with the kind of work you are trying to express. So I thought that it's best to show what sustainable healthcare is all about. Why do we need to even think about this area? And how is my work, how is the technology which I am using contributing towards the sustainability of this particular area? So I work in Institute of Nuclear Medicine and Allied Sciences in Tamarpur, Delhi. This is most popularly known as INMAS. It's a very good, very reputed thyroid center in Delhi. It's a very old lab there. And in addition to this, we are very fortunate to have a lab where we have from the primary basic scientists to clinicians and translational science. So actually, when we are working, we are able to see the entire platform. That is, we start work in a lab on a bench, on a chemistry lab where we start off, and then when our application comes, it's first in the animals, followed by the humans. So I have a complete plethora to play with, and it's really interesting to work in this area. But today what we are talking about is nanotechnology role in sustainable healthcare. So the flow and direction of our discussion today would be first, I'm sure you would have been hearing it for past 2 days, what sustainability is all about. And then I will be taking you through what is the need for actually talking about sustainability in healthcare. What are the different innovative technologies which are being used for having a sustainable healthcare system? How nanotechnology is contributing in making the healthcare system more sustainable. And that boils down to the fact that we are, through this technology, again creating a sustainability within the environment per se. So when I talk about sustainability and sustainable development, we have been hearing for a very long time about many issues which the environment is facing. People are saying that resources are being used. There is no dearth of resources, but they are being used in such a way that today the environment and the earth is really struggling to maintain balance. And the cartoon on the right side of the screen is exactly that. The earth is sick because of the way it is being abused. And the doctor and nurse, when they're coming and seeing the earth, they're saying, do you know we have started using reusable gowns and caps? And that's a big news for the earth, because disposing of what you throw in as waste becomes a very tough task if it is something which the earth cannot digest. So that is where, how we started having different problems in different areas of life, that this term sustainability and sustainable development came into picture. So when you talk about sustainability, is sustainability and sustainable development the same thing? So actually, sustainability is a process of avoiding the depletion of natural resources in order to keep the ecology into balance. And when you talk about sustainable development, we do the developments in such a way that we are able to meet our current requirements without compromising on the ability of the future generations to meet their own requirements. That means we need to very judiciously use the resources which are available to us and to use them at a rate that they remain available to other people as well. So a very important topic in today's world, where we are seeing that the earth has started showing its own repercussions because of the misuse and abuse of the earth that we have done. We have seen tsunamis coming in, which were completely unthoughtful of earlier. Latest reminder, a very cruel and a very bad reminder, is the COVID-19, which is still not gone. It's still looming on us. So how, all these things, they could be man-made, created, you can call it many ways, but at the end of the day, why these things are cropping up? It's because we are just not thinking about what we are doing today and how is it going to impact the future generations. We are just worried about the current world. We are not taking into cognizance that this world will sustain even after it will be there, even after we leave. So we have to leave the world as a happy place, a place where the coming generations can also meet their requirements. And I'm talking constantly about generations, place, and earth, because when we talk about healthcare or any other medical related issue, that is the basic, it's the core of our sustenance. If a human life, all other forms of sustainable development come into picture only after you have a very nice health, only if you are healthy enough to do the work that you intend to. So this is a very important factor of consideration, your health, the healthcare system, and how it should be functioning. So this sustainable development is not something which I thought of because of the FDP. It is in fact the over years of abuse and misuse of the resources that we have done. The United Nations has actually given some sustainable development goals for the year 2030. And in these goals, there are around 17, 18 goals which United Nations has put on paper. And out of this, it is very interesting to see that healthcare sustainability comes under the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which says that you should have a healthy life for all people. You should be able to promote the well-being of all people. So sustainable development, in addition to that, there are many areas, different areas where sustainable development is important, which has been taken care of. But this I feel is one area which is a part of the 18, but that is the main, that should be the core. It should be the focus of all other development. All other development follows once you have a very good, sustainable, and very, very healthy healthcare system. So when you say that these are the 17 goals on the left hand side, you can see all the different goals. There are some goals which are given to each of the goals, which is there in the United Nations development, and a lot of work is going on. Already it is there. A lot of work is being ensured, and as we go down through the presentation, you will realize that this completely exclusive thing, which is a sustainable development goal of 2030, how it matters so much to have a healthcare system which is sustainable. Now, when we talk about the sustainable development goals, that is 3, and we are talking about ensuring healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages, it is further subdivided into many points. And many of these points are very pertinent to the environment and the ecosystem which exists in India. Maternal mortality is one of the most crucial things which is being addressed by the government, and by 2030 it is planned to reduce the maternal mortality ratio. Neonatal child mortality, infectious diseases is one which was taken up in this as a goal. And if you see that COVID-19 when it came, it was a part of this exercise. It has been already been identified that infectious diseases, they take a huge toll on healthcare systems. And the SDG Board 3.3 focuses specifically on infectious diseases. And diseases which we were talking about till date were the hepatitis and malaria and chicken pox, smallpox. These are small diseases which we have been talking about, but nobody could imagine anything in their even in the wildest of dreams that there could be something like a COVID-19, which actually brought out a lot of lacunas which are there in the current healthcare system. It also helped the healthcare industry identify that what are the areas which we need to address. And it also brought about certain features which, not directly, but indirectly, it led to understanding that how important healthcare systems are, how important it is to have a very sustainable healthcare system, because this is now that we are facing. We never know what our future generations are going to face. So in addition to that, there are some issues like the road traffic accidents, traumas which happen, substance abuse, which is regarding the drugs, and then sexual reproductive health, and universal health coverage and environmental health. All these things are different names are being given. They have tried to subdivide it into so many heads so that everything can be covered, and which matters to the longevity and the good life and well-being of the coming generations. Now, when we talk about a healthcare system, how should we identify? What all should we include in the healthcare system, and why should we even care about it? Because as long as we are healthy, we never give importance to what health is all about. It's only when you reach your 35s, 40s, when things start changing in your life, that healthcare starts featuring an important point in your list. So when we talk about healthcare, we can divide it into 3 basic parts. It's the primary healthcare systems, which are your general practitioners and your local doctors and dentists who are there to give you the primary care. Secondary healthcare includes all the modalities which are available in the hospitals, the imaging modalities which are there, the neurologists, the specialists of the area. They come under the secondary care of a healthcare system. And tertiary care is when you are actually hospitalized, you are undergoing some kind of a invasive surgery, or you are in a hospital for looking after. So that forms a tertiary healthcare. So we need to organize the medical care which is provided at all these 3 levels in terms of both the individuals, the facilities, the community as a whole, to have a very good, sustainable healthcare systems. Now, when we define healthcare, again, WHO has dimensions of quality of healthcare. It should be effective, efficient. It should be accessible to the normal people who are around. it should be acceptable to them, because depending upon the various cultures which are followed all around the world, there are many things which are acceptable in certain cultures, and there's many things which are not acceptable. It should be equitable, that is equally distributable among the various stratas of the society which are present, and the healthcare system that you develop should be very safe. That is one way in which you can attract more and more people to follow a very healthy and sustainable healthcare practices. So when we talk about healthcare, who all come under this area? So healthcare, it serves as it plays a very central role, because this can, from becoming a part of the problem, this has an ability to become a part of the solution. You talk about any area of work, and the moment you talk about any area of work, what comes to your mind is the manpower. When you talk about the manpower and demand, the first thing which comes to you is that if a person has to solve a problem, then that person has to be completely fit and healthy to take a same decision. So there are a lot of, so healthcare sustainability, in fact, is the very core of bringing all about. And the public healthcare system which is there, it includes all kind of hospitals, pharmaceutical industries, diagnostic centers, nursing home, pharmacy, drug manufacturers, and so on and so forth. And it's a combination of all these areas which actually brings about a very sustainable healthcare system. None of them can live without each other, but all of them have to follow the practices which are sustainable for bringing about, which can bring about a change in development acceptable to all and useful to every one of us. So when you talk about, it's not only for the healthcare sustainability, but when we talk about sustainability, it has to be, it has to overcome various challenges, and they are divided into three areas. One is the economic challenges, social and environmental. When I talk about economical challenges, it is related to most of your financial crisis. What is the demand? What is the consumer? How are the demand spreads? What's the economy of the entire of the system and the country? When we talk about social pillar of this particular sustainability, we are talking in terms of the inequalities which are present in terms of healthcare. We talk about how is the safety, equitability, how much available a particular thing is, and at what level people think of themselves when they involve in such activities. The third one would be environmental. That is the third pillar. And in environment, we are talking about any kind of climatic changes. Now, climatic changes and environmental changes have a severe effect on the human health, and therefore these cannot be avoided when you are planning to make a healthcare system which is highly sustainable and affordable. So according to a report by WHO, this is one of the reports says that more than 2 billion people across the world, they don't have access to essential medicines. Now that is the level of grievance which we are facing today when we talk about healthcare systems and forget about the sustainability. Sustainability cannot come in unless and until you are meeting the requirements of everyone who is around. So it's a Herculean task to address this particular issue, and to achieve any sustainability in pharmaceutical and healthcare sector, it is very important to conserve energy, to without compromising, you have to keep the quality and the quantity of the products high. And it's also, you have to, the hands have to be joined. You can't be disconnected with each other, the respective governments, government organization, private sector, as I showed you, the entire spectrum of people involved in the healthcare industry, they all have to come together. So, this type of reports which say that even today the essential medicines are not available. This all shows that even today we are not able to develop, in spite of our best efforts, we have not been able to develop a healthcare system which is sustainable, and that might be because of many reasons. Not all of them are in our control, but yes, whatever we can do in these terms, we should definitely think of. So this is how I show the biosphere for a sustainable healthcare system. I am talking about the three pillars. I am talking about environmental, social, and economic. When I talk about, when you see this diagram, you can see a lot of overlap. when you have a social and environment system which overlap with each other, which are hands in hand, we have a variable system. When you have social and economic spheres coming together, it becomes equitable. When you have the environment and the economical spheres coming together, it becomes viable for any society. And when all three of them, wherever they overlay each other, that is where the sustainability comes into picture. So it's a long way to go. We are working on different areas. We are trying to bring a good overlap, but unfortunately, the part of the sphere where you see sustainable is still lacking. There is a disjoint disconnect between the three spheres. They don't overlap. But this is the ideal case scenario where if you have these overlapping spheres, this is how things change. So the major criteria to attain sustainable development is that there should be sustainable development in the social, economical, and environmental areas. So all three of them have to go in together if we want any kind of sustainable development, and these three spheres exist even in the medical industry or the healthcare sector. So what are some of the questions which sustainable healthcare is exploring, or which it should be, or which are worth exploring for when you're talking about a sustainable healthcare system? So first is, what is the relevance of the sustainability that we have discussed a little bit? How can healthcare organizations handle their waste or manage their waste? How can we create a low carbon cycle? How does climate change threaten human health? And how can we engage ourselves and others with this agenda? These are some of the questions which came into mind when I was making this presentation. So first point we have discussed in some length, and now we'll take one question at a time to understand this sustainable healthcare scenario. So we have already said that the relevance of sustainability in healthcare, we have discussed it now. Sustainable strategies, what will they do? They'll help to keep the harmful systems out of the environment. Proper medical waste disposal, it would not only, it would also improve the economical economics associated with it, preventing fines and other financial repercussions. And healthcare organizations should become a part of a larger community. So, all these things together with contribute to the three pillars: social, economic, and environmental, what we talked for the development of a sustainable healthcare system. Now, the second question was that how can healthcare organizations deal better with the waste? So if you talk about the waste, and I would take a very small scenario of a hospital. The healthcare hazardous waste regarding healthcare is everywhere. So now with the, I think most of us in all the cities of India now, there is a very strong focus even in your homes to segregate the waste material which is being generated, and to, as I think it is Gila kachara, Sukha kachara, and what can be biodecomposed, or what can be removed. So these things, it is now reached our households, and this is very, very important when you're talking about the hospitals, because 15% of the hospital waste are very potentially hazardous. They are infectious. They have the potential to create different type of toxicities, and there are also radioactive elements which are used in the medical care sector. So it is very important that when we are dealing with these type of things, we have to have a very safe disposal scheme. Most of the practices are in place in maximum hospitals. The radioactivity disposal, its usage is controlled by your atomic energy. BRC is the main agency. The infectious and toxicity related issues, they are well taken care for. And generally the hospital buildings, they have different disposal bins which you see, and they are kept there for you to identify what kind of waste you have and where it should be put. And this is strongly followed by the doctors and the medical professionals who are there in the hospitals. And much of this waste, it is why we need to segregate the waste, is because if the waste is segregated properly, then it can be used for the non-toxic, non-hazardous ones. These can be used for filling up for landfills. Now, this would also tremendously reduce the waste disposal cost, And recycling, with the energy which goes into the recycling, can be controlled to a big effect. So this is an example of the waste segregation where I've shown 4 or 5 different colored waste bins. And this is a black plastic container which normally contains cytotoxic drugs and chemical waste. This is one container which normally you will not see in the patient area. It's where the doctors and the medical professionals are working and sitting. The second is a red bin, which consists of all the infected dressings, or if you have been injected with something and you've been given a cotton to be put on that spot, then all these things which you are using, you should be careful in disposing of in a red plastic container. Then yellow plastic containers, these are used for all the biological waste which are there, and a change in the symbol. That is the symbol of the radioactivity which is shown on the left side of your screen where the 15% of hospital waste is written. This symbol replaces the symbol of a human torso when we are talking about the radioactivity waste disposal. And when we talk about radioactivity waste disposal, a lot of care is taken that whatever radioactivity or radioactive element we are using, that should live its 10 half-life before we put it even into till that time it is put into a shielding material. It's kept in a shielding material so that the radioactive activity which is coming out is much below the level which can infect any human. And at the same time, it is time, distance, and shielding is a principle which is followed when you are talking about radioactive waste disposal. Then you have the blue containers, which consist of your vials or any kind of syringes. And mind you that in a hospital setup, the syringes and needles are also disposed of separately. The needles are burnt out and the syringes are plastics are disposed of. And normally the last one, that is for the white, is again for those sutures and all those kind of things. So basically, what I'm trying to tell is that these and how they are going to be used is given at the bottom. That most of the first one is used for securing the landfills. The second one is normally disposed of by deep burial, where even your dogs and cats or anybody who's able to dig the ground cannot take it out. Then the yellow ones are again done at deep burial. The blue plastic material is recycled, and then it is sharp pit is used for making this disposal of the other material. So basically, the disposal, whatever doesn't fit into this, goes into the common treatment facility. This is the level of waste segregation which is required to be done, which is being done at many of the hospital centers, but maybe not to to the point, or at some places something is missing. So we just need to be very careful, and this would help in the sustaining the environment and also the energy which we are using for disposal. The third question is, how does climate change threaten human health? Very simple. You know that any change in climate, we have allergic reactions, very strong allergic reactions whenever there is the viral fever comes in, whenever there is a change in season, there are seasonal diseases which come. And if you see the figure on the left side, you'll realize that many of the things which we are inhaling, which goes into our body through water or through soil contamination, there are a lot of problems which we are already facing. Lots of us, and especially I don't know about the people from which towns they are, but from a city where I live in Delhi, every time you would be hearing about the air quality index during winters after the Parnali is burnt in north. But I don't know, Parnali must have been burnt earlier also. But in addition, then the same principles were followed earlier, but today they are creating a lot of air quality issues. And that air quality is actually creating a lot of particulate matter at times. When we get up in the morning, here we see it looks like a fog, but it is not a fog. It's basically a combination of your particulate matter and all kind of pollution. In the morning, we have worn, all of us are now wearing masks for COVID-19, but we started wearing masks much before COVID-19 when we had a very poor air quality index in Delhi. So we used to even send our children to school wearing masks to stop the particulate matter. So N95, it's not it is maybe we were given a practice. I would take it like that. But I'm wearing an N95. I think many of the children in Delhi are quite capable of doing it because we had been doing it because of the air quality. So it leads to a lot of problems with the human body, and how the different climatic changes are bringing about changes is on the right side, which shows that rising temperatures, which could be severe weather conditions or it could be extreme heat, that leads to many different type of problems and changes in the vector ecology. This is one of the biggest problems we are facing now. With COVID-19 in between, you would have heard that the virus is constantly changing, it's mutating. So everyone is very apprehensive that whatever is being developed for targeting the current variant, will that be able to control any mutations further? Or for how many mutations can be controlled through the development that we are doing in it? So all these changes and rising sea levels, so there are different aspects of environment which have a direct or indirect implication on the human health. And when you have a human health implication, then I think the rest of the things don't really matter, because then you need to address these issues first. So there is no question that climatic changes, they threaten human health, and until and unless we have sustainability in all areas, these things cannot be controlled, and this is what healthcare addresses. Now, how can we create low carbon care pathways in the medical setups? So right now, if you see on the left side, the prevention, primary care and secondary care, most of the resources are being used on the secondary care level. So this is a very unsustainable way of living, because if we keep using things, maximum resources being used at the secondary care, that means you are allowing something to move from a primary care level, from a prevention level, to reach to a secondary care. So that is a constant usage. It can never be stopped. So this is a very unsustainable model when we talk about a healthcare system. As we go on reducing this usage at the secondary care level, we are going to reduce the carbon cycle tremendously. And if efficiency, if we talk in terms of efficiency and the savings applied, it increases about 30% increase, reduction in the CO2 can be observed by just bringing about a small change in your current model. And if we can turn around the model and maximum resources are used at the prevention level, so we won't need to go to the secondary care level. That is where the model becomes a completely sustainable model. That is, more resources are used for prevention, and you won't need that many resources for going into the secondary and the tertiary care pathways. Now, what are some of the points which can be addressed when we are talking about reducing the carbon care pathways in the healthcare system? Energy efficiency, using making green buildings designs where the energy efficiency or energy which is used is low. Alternative energy generation systems, use solar energy wherever it is possible, hydro energy wherever it is possible, wind energy wherever it is possible, and using, I think you had a this thing on biodiesel also just before me. So these are alternative things which are being researched upon, which are not only sustainable, but they are also eco-friendly. Food which is being provided, I think nutrition is not something which is which can be pinpointed at one area. The food at different areas within India also, if you see, the food habits are so different in all the areas, but the nutrition which everyone gets in different parts of the country is good. Everyone can get a good nutrition based on the food which is grown locally. So that is providing some kind of, creating a kind of healthcare system where a sustainability in terms of food can be designed, then reduction in the waste, and to conserve water, avoid bottled water when safe alternatives exist. If you have ROs, if you have UV irradiated systems, you can use that would reduce the use of bottled water. So how can we engage ourselves and others with this agenda? Now, this is more of a social question. And when many, education policies are being modified. Now we are talking about this scheme where you are giving nutritious food to the children in school. So as a part of that, the basically inculcating eating healthy and trying to have healthy food. Let's leave apart what actually is happening. Let's leave that out. But the intent of doing that has been to inculcate the habits of healthy eating right from the school level. Then the health policies, the social policies, and the economic development as a community as a whole. When it starts getting, it pitches itself at all levels, that's when we can involve each and every one of us for the sustainable health, for developing a sustainable healthcare system. And this is basically education and health. And these are all whatever you are hearing here is a very vicious circle. You have education, you know that people understand the value of being healthy, and they would be healthy, leading to better education. It's a circle which keeps coming. Everything is related. It is contextual. It's always with respect to a certain perspective that we have to see all the things. So when some of the 7 pillars of self-care which we can think of for having a sustainable healthcare right from the primary level of prevention, it is very important to have a health literacy. सबको दादी माँ के नुस्खे तो हिंदुस्तानी घरों में दादी माँ के नुस्खे बहुत पॉपुलर हैं. आधी तो हमारी बीमारियां से आपके हल्दी के दूध से ही ठीक हो जाती हैं. सो जस्ट इग्नोरिंग देम एंड गोइंग इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट. इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट कि आप अपनी चीजों को you have a focus on what you have good, because even in COVID-19 I am sure आप सभी ने काढ़ा भी पिया होगा, तुलसी, गुग्गल, all herbs I name, and somebody would have had it at some stage of the COVID-19. So health literacy which was there, हमारे तो वेद और शास्त्रों में we have lot of information, but we are somehow forgetting it. So we need to be very aware of our health systems also. We have to be cognizant of our knowledge about healthcare even from our Veds and Purans. Self-awareness about what you are, what your body is all about, how you function, when are you feeling. You are the first person to know if you are feeling a bit under the weather, and you will be the first person to address your own issues. Physical activity play a very important role. Obesity is becoming a big health issue now in India also, and physical activity, because it is getting reduced, and the things are becoming very comfortable. That is why this is creating problems. Eating healthy, I've already talked about. Risk avoidance, wherever you can avoid doing things, you should do that. Good hygiene, we have learned it we have had a very hard lesson from COVID-19. I don't think I need to elaborate on good hygiene. Optimal use of products and services is what we are talking about when we talk about sustainable healthcare and development. So, when we are technology how does technology contribute when you are addressing the sustainability in healthcare? What is the role of technology, and how do we? So now we realize that one is your understanding, your basic education, but at the same time, there are certain ways and means by which that education can be applied to create helpers. And I would always treat technology as a helper. I never let technology take over the human brain. I have always treated technology as a helper to design and fabricate and execute the ideas which come to the human brain. So how technology is now being used in creating a kind of sustainability in healthcare. When we talk about the use of technology in driving sustainable healthcare, basically we talk about 3 main areas. And those 3 areas would be one is technology within the healthcare delivery system. That is when you're using it for any kind of imaging. Then you have second is health and healthcare delivery systems. That's again a place where technology can be used. And technology outside the healthcare delivery system, that is networking, how well you can network. So one is a technology which is used to see within you. The second is a technology which is used for providing something to you inside your body. And the third is a technology which can connect the various aspects which are required to give you that healthcare system. So basically, we can use technology in 3 ways. And this was, from a biomedical engineering perspective, understanding the content, and in all three stages, you will see that we are basically trying to understand a different kind of a content. In the first one, we are trying to understand it, what is actually happening. In the second one, we are trying to address it. And in the third one, we are trying to evaluate a combination of the two. So this was to improve the patient health outcomes. The idea of using technology is from now understanding the concept to actually technology outside. That means you are networking now the concept to different stakeholders and improving the sustainability of a concept or context what you have developed. And this requires a very multidisciplinary approach. It includes people who have ideas about computer science, medical knowledge, operations, management, basically how to address individual needs, to develop survey forms. There are not many systems which come under this particular umbrella, but broadly speaking, we can use technology in three different formats when we are talking about driving sustainability in the healthcare systems. So what are some of the technologies which are currently in use in primary healthcare systems? We have point of care screening diagnostic technologies which are available. Now many of the mobile phones and they are now providing softwares and apps. This is right now with the doctors, but in some countries, some places, this has already come on the phones where you can transmit your diagnosis, your images on an app for the doctor to have a very good understanding about it. And this has been tested. It is actually being developed for bringing the, what I said, technology outside. That means you are trying to network the specialists with very remote areas. This is also some of the technologies which we are trying to develop within the Defense Research Development Organization also, because we talk about our defense forces in very remote areas where the presence of a specialist and presence of big diagnostic tools are not there. So we are trying to use these technologies for reaching very remote areas. And some of these technologies have been tested in countries like Uganda and Bangladesh, where even the main cities are not so developed. But yes, they play a very important role in the rural and the remote areas. Then portable telemedicine unit that is being developed. This is a device, that can be connected to a server based unit, and both it can be used by the primary and secondary caregivers. Then fetal heart rate monitor. This is normally available in most of the hospitals now. And whenever a whenever a childbirth is expected, the mother and the fetus both are put on these heart rate monitors, and it is through that we are trying to control the mortality in the child care. So this is a very important, and it's playing a big role in one of these sustainable development goals, which is the neonatal deaths and monitoring. Then medical data communication systems, point of care systems, as I said, that how you have to develop your medical data, and when you are, even if your primary healthcare worker is seeing you in the rural remote areas, how that data can be transferred to a communicable network to a specialist who's sitting at a distance, but who can provide you a real-time opinion about your health condition. Then you are developing portable power-free medical instruments like sterilizers. Most of the sterilizers which are based on batteries don't need any electricity around. So whenever we send our medical doctors to army areas which are present in remote places, these type of sterilizer systems are also used, which are battery based, which are based through huge batteries. They can be used for sterilizing it. So this is kind of a system which is very important, and it is a very innovative technology where you need absolute sanitized material. There you can use it. Then anesthesia delivery is another area. Then mobile supply chain management tools, like most of the things, if you see through, you will see that it's a very complex utilization of all the areas of study which I was talking about, which is computer science, engineering, medical understanding, then transporting analytics. So all of these combinations are resulting in innovative technologies, and these innovative technologies are actually going a long way. In fact, recently there has been a work which has been going on in developing mobile MRI machines which can be carried to remote areas, and they are very compact systems. MRI, if few people are aware of, it is a basically a magnetic field which is set up. So moving, there are huge magnets which bring about an understanding, which go and magnetize the protons within your body and give you an information. So that is a huge setup. We go to a hospital. It is a big machine which is there, but now we are trying to bring it into a portable form, and a lot of research activities are going on in the development of agents and chemical compounds and chemical agents which can be used as contrast agents for working in those systems, because the field needs to be strong, but the magnetic property of the material has to be controlled. So this is another of this. So what are these, when we are using all these innovative technologies, why are we using and where are they being used? One is developing a technology, but this is on the right side, which are a list of wearables which are currently available. And I'm sure many of you, if you are health conscious, you might be wearing those watches where you are monitoring your steps, how many steps you are doing, which is also related to your heart rate. You're basically wearing it on your wrist, and you are able to, and the more advanced the technologies and the apps are becoming, you are getting to know all your vitals on your wrist. So these are some of the wearables which we are using these days. They're already they're available in the market, and this is possible because of the innovative technologies which have been developed, specifically keeping the primary healthcare in mind. So this is the level where we are talking about prevention. We are talking about you yourself identifying the changes happening to you, and you yourself addressing the changes by monitoring your vitals. So these are some of the wearables which are available. Now, second is the Internet of Medical Things and Technologies, how you can do it. Medical devices, they are connected to monitoring various part of your devices, and these are not remote at times, they are placed next to you. But the idea is to bring them onto an internet level so that active implantable devices can be put inside your body, and you don't have to visit a doctor repeatedly. The statistics from that can be coming to a server system where it is where it can be accessed by a doctor, and without your coming to a hospital, the doctor can provide you an input on any of the situations which are changing within your body with respect to the particular implant or medical device which has been used. And the results which are generated through these Internet of Medical Things, they are optimized with reference to the patients, with reference to the healthcare professionals, what their requirements are, and how do they treat it. Patients, families, they should be made, it is best that the families of the patients are connected with them, and the healthcare system at large. So there are a lot of information which is now available in cloud. You are also seeing a lot of apps which are there now on the mobile phones where you can connect to doctors. And every day you are seeing an ad coming out where you can talk to a medical doctor, you can take their opinion, and the specialist available on you. You can choose a specialist, take a time. He would, she would address you. They could have a video call with you, or they could even chat with you and give you suggestions upon. So this is, this is a very nice way of having a healthcare system which is accessible and which is acceptable. And many a times you might have issues, but you have issues going to the hospital, you're not having time. There is some issue or the other. If you have these systems with you, you are able to get a first opinion very quickly, and you might be able to address it. Something like a stitch in time saves 9. So if you are able to address it at a primary level, it would never go to the level where you would need the intervention by a hospital or by a specialist. So when we are, how the advanced innovative technologies are redefining the healthcare system. Now this is a kind of ecosystem. This is a beautiful image of how we are developing on the technologies when we are talking about healthcare system. The core technology layer, which is at the bottom, that is giving you the basic basics of technology. It is in terms of your education, I would say. Then the application starts when you start making a technology layer. You start improvising your core technology as per the requirements of the app, or as per the applications which are required. Then comes the service platform. You make a further modification in the technology, bring it to the level where the services can use it. Then you have a knowledge platform where it is actually applied. You could have from that, when you're using all these 3, 4 platforms in the healthcare sector, you might have digital hospitals. You would have healing facilities which are connected through the technology. You would have a digital living will. That means you would have a complete system on your fingertips, and a total life support system will be available based on the technologies that you are developing. You could get in touch with the different aspects of your well-being through these technology platforms. So a very sustainable ecosystem can be developed if we use different technologies, and right from the basics of the technology, bringing it to application, and then modifying it as per the service and application required, or the industry which you are addressing. That is when your technologies start becoming innovative, and they start redefining the sectors they are being developed for. Now, for good healthcare, there are many of the technologies have been developed. I have named a few of them, and which include from 3D imaging, 3D printing, augmented reality. That is, you have to wear goggles, and then you are put into a scenario in virtual reality, and then the live scene starts playing, and you start reacting as per the live scenario. So that is a very good way of even understanding the cognition, and we are a big user of this technology when we develop our other technologies to come in. And Internet of Medical Things we have already discussed, and what we would focus out of these technologies is a specific technology, which is the nanotechnology, which is one of the technologies contributing to bringing about sustainable healthcare, especially in the area of diagnosis, therapy, and tissue regeneration. So when we talk about nanotechnology, what is nanotechnology and what is the hue and cry about it? So nanotechnology, as the word nano means that it is any 10 raised to power minus 9 meters, anything in that level, that is nano. And using that level of material for developing a technology in a layman's term is a nanotechnology. This can be used for any industry, any sector, but the basic remains the same. Bring your core material to the level of 10 raised to power minus 9 meters, and then develop a technology around it. So before I start off with specific nanotechnology, I would just like to showcase that in the beginning I had shown you the sustainable goals of United Nations, and I want you to see this video, which would show how nanotechnology is helping to achieve the sustainable development goals. So just let me know whether it is. Is it audible? Can someone please let me know, is this video audible to everyone? So these are the 17 goals of the United Nations, and I assume it should be audible, so I'm just starting it again. So please go through this video. I think that gave you a very clear picture. I'm sure you would be reading about the other areas as well. So let's now focus specifically on nanotechnology, and let me take you through this presentation as I keep on highlighting how nanotechnology is contributing towards the healthcare system. So when we talk about, as the video showed you, that it is basically a technology at the level of 10 raised to the minus 9 meters, and it is bringing about this change in the size of the particle, or the change in the size of the material, or bringing about a change in these dimensions actually brings a big quantum leap. And that quantum confinement of the material brings about a big change in the properties. Some of the materials which are opaque become transparent, some material which is heavy becomes lightweight, and there are big changes in the color combinations. A lot of things change when you go on confinement, go to the level of quantum confinement. You are actually bringing the material into a size range smaller than your burst radius. So when you can imagine the size when I'm talking about going into the becoming smaller than the burst radius, and it makes a completely redefines the property of the existing material in a micro level, and it is contributing in many different industries as I've already shown you. And let's focus on basically how would we define it? If you have to define nanotechnology, and this is one area which covers almost all it, the latest one of the words of science which is gaining a lot of momentum, and as said, people say love to use acronyms. So STEM is a word which in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So in all these growing field and areas, nanotechnology is playing a major role. And when you have to broadly define nanotechnology, it is basically interdisciplinary study. It is not limited to a particular subject. It is interdisciplinary study, and at the intersection of all these different subjects lies nanotechnology. Then when you are talking about a very simplified definition, then you are saying that anything which is in the range of 10 raised to the minus 9 meters makes nano. And when you come to a very specific technical definition, and when you are trying to understand the material and matter in terms of its dimension, it's approximately between 1 to 100 nanometer when we call it as a nano-sized particle material or whatever you are developing. So nanotechnology, it lies at the interface or in the center of many of the different subjects. And the beauty of this technology also lies in this, that you can tune the already existing materials based on your basic education to create a material which has a completely different application. And that is what is used maximum when we are using nanotechnology in different areas. So when I talk in terms of biology and I talk in terms of healthcare, I talk in terms of medicine, what is the importance of nanoscale and what is the size that I am referring to? This is just for your visualization so that you understand at the level we are working. Most of your biomolecules which are present, they are present in the range of 10 raised to power 4, 5, and so on and so forth. And the nanoparticles which are present, they are smaller than the size of your cell. They actually are able to target specific molecules. They are equivalent to sizes of specific moieties which are present inside your cells. They lie in the range where your protein, DNA, and viruses fall. So that is a small size we are talking about. That is the nanometer scale we are talking about. These are different forms of nano sized material which is there. It could be a micelle, it could be a liposome, it could be a dendrimer, it could be core shell nanoparticles, could be quantum dots, it could be polymeric nanoparticles. But whatever the formation or whatever the constitution of the material is, the size range would remain in this. So you can imagine that when this particle becomes smaller than your cell, it has great potential in terms of medical applications. It can go inside your cells, it can touch upon your molecules which are present inside the cells, and that is what makes this a wonderful material for medical applications. So before we move on to the technical aspects, what is the healthcare nanotechnology market? And this is how it is, that you can see the change what has happened from 2021 to 2026. This is a survey which is done by one of the very well-known companies, and see the increase in the market share of healthcare nanotechnology market. And this is the way it is growing throughout the world. And if you can see, the fastest growing market for healthcare nanotechnology is the Asia Pacific market. And the largest market of today is the North America area, but the biggest potential lies in the Asia Pacific region. So we are very much a part of the system where the nanomedicine and health technology market is growing very fast. So it's very important to understand this technology and how it is impacting the healthcare market. So when we are talking, this is a spider web which I wanted to share with you people, that global nanotechnology market and what are the top impacting factors. When what we are seeing is right now, this is a study which showed the results of 2018 and how it is going to change by 2025. So by using nanotechnology, the adoption of this nanotechnology in medical imaging side will be increasing. The emerging technologies, advancement in nanotechnology, that is going to far increase in the outreach. The problem regarding the deployment of these techniques, yes, they need to be taken care of. High cost of the technology which is there will be reduced, and the increasing government support and funding to this will definitely is. It has already grown multiple folds, and it is going to grow further, and it's going to grow great. In fact, if I may share with you, there have been a lot of the Honorable Prime Minister has had many initiatives, in which one of them was Vaibhav. And Vaibhav was bringing together all the NRIs who are outside the country and how they can contribute towards helping India grow in different areas. One of the areas where I was leading the entire discussions and the meetings was in the area of pharmaceuticals and biotechnology. And both these areas, every aspect of it where we went had some form of nano associated with it. So the government is already aware about these technologies, and it is taking a very serious note on how to use these technologies for bringing about research development, which could be translational and which can reach the marketplaces very fast, thereby improving the sustainability and the utilization of particular areas and about particular things. So what are the areas of applications of nanoparticles? The left side shows, I don't think any area is untouched. And our focus area would be the biomedical and healthcare sector. When we talk about the properties, there are four important properties which make these nanomaterials useful. One is that gravitational force, it does not exist on these particles. It is basically the electromagnetic forces become very important in these cases. The quantum, as I told you, it's a quantum confinement. So there is a big change at that level. The surface to volume ratios are very high, and there could be a difference in the size as well as the morphology. So what does this all mean? You know, the dominance of understanding the nanoscale related property means that dominance of electromagnetic forces means that these particles don't settle down under the influence of gravity. So if you are synthesizing them, they will remain suspended, or they will remain in the form of suspensions. Then very important quantum mechanical changes, models can be changed using these materials. The high surface to volume ratios are very useful for medical applications. We'll see how. And the random Brownian motion which these materials shows, because they are not under the influence, they are influenced of the electromagnetic forces. These are few of the four factors which are, whichever property application you talk about, these are the four core factors which will influence the development of new materials and properties. Okay? So these are the different classes of nanoparticles specifically which are used in the medical industry and the healthcare sector, which are polymeric. These polymeric are basically, they are contributing towards the delivery systems. They are precise particles where the payloads can be increased to a great extent. You can have a combination of hydrophilic hydrophobicity together, and the possibility of aggregation toxicity goes low because it is generally polymeric organic polymers are used in it. Inorganic, which are used for their unique electrical, magnetic, optical property at this size, and it is used for diagnostic applications. Then they are lipid based, which are extremely useful when you're talking about traversing your body, which is generally lipidic in nature, and most of the barriers which come across can be managed by these type of systems. So these are three classes of systems which contribute immensely towards the healthcare sector. Now, this is another video where I'm just trying to show you how nanomedicine in specific is impacted by nanotechnology. So please enjoy.
Nanomedicine. Sound like rocket science? Allow me to explain. Nano in math means 10 to the negative ninth power. In plain words, that means itsy bitsy. By using new, improved properties of materials at the nanometer scale, nanomedicine is medicine performed at an extremely small level, working with particles that are so tiny you could fit 5,000 of them around a single human hair. The fact that we can now see and work with such small particles means a lot for the future of medicine in many ways. It gives doctors like me the potential to detect diseases earlier and increase the accuracy of their diagnosis. Diagnostic information can be delivered more quickly and cost efficiently, and advanced imagery tools can be developed to see the body better. We can also make great advances in regenerative medicine by using appropriate nanostructures to repair human cells, tissues, skin, bones, or organs, and get them back in working order. Most nanomedicine products that are already available are drug delivery systems, where nanoparticles carry and deliver drugs to specific parts of the body more efficiently. This process is controlled so accurately that, compared with standard medicine, side effects are reduced and treatment effectiveness and patient safety are increased. A more revolutionary development in nanomedicine is nanoparticles with intrinsic therapeutic efficacy. These particles aren't a vehicle for targeted drug delivery anymore, but instead they're the principal active element that will provide completely new ways to treat patients. Overall, nanomedicine can be used to improve the treatments of several diseases, like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular, and neurodegenerative disease, for the benefit of patients. As with any other drugs or medical products, nanomedicine products are thoroughly tested in the lab and in real conditions before being approved by official regulatory bodies and prescribed to patients. Nanomedicine means the future of medicine is really small and very bright.
So this video actually shows you the crux of how nanomedicine, how nanotechnology has entered the area in the domain of medicine, and how it is going to improve the. So you understood from the video what sizes we are talking about and how it is going inside the cells and working out. And it is just that nanomedicine, these are interventions at molecular level, and this works like it is either injected or it is inhaled in an inhaled form or it's in a delivery state. There are different ways which are used for treating the different aspects of the different diseases. And neurodegenerative diseases are again one of the very important factors which was quite popular in the West till a few years back. But now Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, trauma-related issues are becoming very omnipotent and omnipotent. It is in fact present in India too. So these medicinal interventions are improving the care which is currently available, and these are the areas which we are targeting. We are talking about their application in medicine, therapeutics, vaccines, and medical imaging. These are some of the products which this is an illustration of some products which are there and which are being worked upon. It is a pill camera. Pill cam is basically a pill which has a camera inside. So when you are eating it, it can show what is going on inside. Then there are dose tracking pills that which are able, they have sensors which have data in which you wear a patch, and the data is communicated from the patient to the doctor, and you can track the doses and time which is there. Then there are vibrant capsule. This is where people have problems in the digestion. This can be used for jump-starting your digestion. It is basically effective treatment in terms of constipations and places where laxatives are used. And then it is a gas capsule has been developed where the oxygen level allows, wherever there is a dirt of permeable membrane allows the gases to enter the capsule, and, it can find out where the level of the gases are low. So, gut microbiome and all these things when they start generating different type of gases within your body, you have acidity, you have many things happening, and this type of a gas capsule gives a very good information outside. Then there are some things like smart sensor capsules, which are able to stay inside your body and give information what's going on in a particular organ to the doctor or to caretaker outside, and it gives a better, you are carrying on with your daily activities and you can do these things. So these all are advantages. So it is actually trying to improve the healthcare system at the same time making it sustainable in the form that you are not undergoing any kind of issue in having these things. You are able to manage your day-to-day routine, at the same time you are being also looked after. These are some of the patch-based vaccines which have been made, and the smart bandages. There is a bandage called as Tegaderm. Now that is a bandage which is a very effective bandage. It is normally with the wounds which don't get healed have a problem of having oxygenation in the wound or some kind of fluid accumulation. So there are smart bandages which can be impregnated with the required antimicrobial agents and the oxygen releasing combinations. Like there could be enzyme like a glucose or it's called peroxidase, which can break down through enzymatic activity. It can be broken down into molecular oxygen, which provides wound localized oxygen, as well as there is an exchange of air. So these are some of the technologies which are coming into place just because we are able to convert the material to the nano size, increase the surface to volume ratio, provide more surface for attaching a variety of material and a variety of ingredients. Basically, why it is becoming sustainable, that first you had to give if you talk in terms of a wound, first you have to clean the wound, then you have to give the medicine, then you put a bandage, then you are going again for change of the bandage, again the same process. It's cumbersome and it is painful. So by using these technologies, we are trying to develop medicines which are self-sustained bandages which can be used, and by applying it once, it might have a shelf life, it might have a lifespan. But once given, it is taking care of 3-4 actions which you have to do. So basically, it is reducing the time and making the process also quite sustainable and useful. Now, if we come to the next part of nanomedicine is diagnostic imaging. And imaging can be done at different levels as shown in the image on the website. It is from the outside of which what you call as anatomy, and you keep going down. And from anatomical imaging, you can go to molecular imaging, and all these areas. There are nanoparticles which can be used. Gold nanoparticles can be used in ultrasound and CT imaging. They are being used for improving the signal to noise ratios. The iron oxide magnet nanoparticles are used in your MRI studies. Radioactive tagged nanoparticles are being used for PET imaging and SPECT imaging. So there are different type of particles. They are functionalized to address the different diagnostic imaging techniques and to address the requirements. From the nanotechnology, since I understand that this is a very mixed group of people, so I have kept videos because that gives you a better understanding than me trying to explain it on the either through a material or a work which I have done. So for a general understanding of how nanotechnology can be good for diagnostic imaging, Please see this video.
Nanoparticles are being developed for diagnostic imaging, for the early detection of neurological disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. The technology is based upon contrast nanoparticles, which can be metallic, magnetic, or polymeric in nature. These particles can be functionalized with a biological targeting agent, such as an antibody, and are generally between 10 and 100 nanometers in diameter. For the detection of cardiovascular disease, contrast nanoparticles are introduced into the bloodstream. In this example, the particles are targeted towards proteins on the surface of an atherosclerotic plaque. These plaques can lead to blockage of arteries, resulting in events such as strokes or heart attacks. When the particles bind to the plaque, high loading of the particles can be achieved due to their small size. Nanoparticles are being developed.
Okay. So basically, it is the addition of certain antibodies. We are either targeting certain receptors. Let me just give you in a sentence that our body has receptors or it has antibodies which are recognized by specific pathologies, or you could call certain membranes which are present. And when we tag these to the nanoparticles, these nanoparticles reach along with the antibodies and these small molecules as a part and parcel of their cargo. And since the membrane receptors and antibodies are able to recognize them as one of their own, so they pull the whole thing in, taking the nanoparticles with them. And when you're using nanoparticles, which can be used as diagnostic probes, depending upon the property they're using. If you're using magnetic nanoparticles, they can be used for MRI. If you're using the radioactivity based nanoparticles, they can be used in the PET and SPECT image, that is positron emission tomography. And SPECT, these are the diagnostic things which you hear when you are undergoing some major diseases related to cardiovascular or neurodegenerative cancer in particular. These are all the imaging modalities which are used for studying the extent of the damage which has been done to the body, or where all it's metastasizing or spreading. So these all modalities are enhancing the kind of images we are getting, and the kind of the localization of these particular things is helping preventing the further spread. So these are few of the techniques and the technology, how it is used in different systems being used in the medical industry. Now, when you talk about drug delivery systems and using nanotechnology, then why we use them? Because the targeting becomes better because of the increased surface area where the specific molecules can be tagged. The solubility at times of the drugs becomes better. The rate of drug delivery can be controlled by either a sustained release model or different models of release. And drug stability would also increases if it gets degraded enzymatically when inside. The advantages is that the bioavailability, a drug becomes effective in our body. It has a therapeutic window. Like any window, it has a therapeutic window. That is the amount in which it is effective in your body. So the bioavailability of that drug has to always match or lie within the therapeutic window. And if it doesn't lie in the window, then either you will not have the impact, it will not impact it. And that is why when you are giving drugs and medicines, you are prescribed 2 times a day, 1 time in a day, 3 times in a day. You are told that because the therapeutic window of that particular drug is maintained to do the action it is required for. So different characteristic features of the nanoparticles, their size, coating, surface charges, morphology, whether they are spherical, they are rod-like, they are hollow, they are star-shaped. I think you had the first lecture on nanoabsorbents. So in that, they would have told you about the different shapes that can be acquired by these particles and how the absorption properties they change with the morphology. So all these things can be controlled through your chemical reactions, mechanisms, and according to the requirement of the medical industry, the nanoparticles can be created. In nanoabsorbents, you would have heard about porous material also, and porous materials are extensively used now for delivering many type of biomolecules, for providing what you say, a kind of delivering of gases. Therapeutic gasotransmitter molecules are now being developed based on metal organic frameworks, which are also a very strong class of adsorbents which is being used. So I'm sure you would have heard about it. So these are some of these are different classes which are being developed as per the requirement of the applications. This is a video which would again give you a very good understanding about the drug delivery, how in action, when you're using a nanoparticle, how the drug delivery is done and how it makes it so useful. Just these are the cells which are inside your body.
Cancer cells isolated from human tumours can be used to help the development of novel cancer therapies. For most drugs to be therapeutically active, they must go inside the cell. Nanoparticles carrying drug payloads can be used to facilitate the drug delivery. Nanoparticles can be targeted to receptors that are overexpressed on the surface of cancer cells. They then enter the cells via a process called endocytosis. Antibody fragments engineered on the nanoparticle bind to the receptors, initiating the internalization process. Inside the cell, clathrin proteins form a cage around the developing endocytic vesicle, which is then cleaved from the cell membrane. The newly formed vesicle carrying the nanoparticle travels further inside the cell, where it is captured and fuses with an early endosome. Inside the acidic endosomal compartment, the nanoparticle degrades, releasing the therapeutic cargo, which induces a controlled death of the cancer cell. Nanoparticle-based drug delivery provides a novel and targeted approach for the future of cancer therapy.
So I think that was a beautiful depiction. It's a very difficult image and a video to make. I have been working on nanoparticles for almost now 21 years. But actually creating a video out of how it is working. This is also a benefit of having technology, wonderful technology to make such videos which make you any layman understand what difference it is creating. So you saw that how well the particle goes inside and the amount of drug it carries with it. And the best part is that if you can localize it, the side effects which are there with the associated treatments get reduced. I know we are not right now at a stage where we can say that we have completely won over this, but this is one step in the right direction for providing especially care for cancer, which is still one of the diseases where doctors are fighting for survival of the patients. So these are different applications of theranostic formulations which are used for addressing their medical requirements. Now, nanotechnology, I thought this would be interesting for many of you, that how nanotechnology has contributed in this COVID-19 pandemic. And if you talk about the pandemic, there is hardly any area of medical industry where it has not contributed. For example, right from the detection of the virus, when you were, I just hope and pray none of you had to go through the test, but if you went through a COVID-19 test, you would have got a CT score. And that is how many times your virus has to be amplified to tell you whether you are a COVID positive patient or a negative patient. So, and having in a small sample, that is the nasal swab which was taken, and it was used for detection of the virus. You can imagine that a small swab, how much viral load, if it varies, you might not be able to detect it if it is low. And for that, gold nanoparticles were developed. Very quickly, a gold nanoparticle based technique was developed, which was able to aggregate the virus which is present in your nasal swabs or the throat swabs, and that amplified the signal. So that helped us in finding out how whether the virus is present, and on that basis, the scoring was done. Whether you are a moderate COVID patient, you are a severe COVID patient, or you are a borderline case, or you are COVID free. So these all technologies were developed within a span of months. And the reason was simple, because we had this technology with us. We were able to repurpose the material very fast. So nanotechnology, the development which used to look useless, which never, or people didn't see the importance of it, but gold nanoparticles were being developed for ultrasound and CT imaging. Nobody thought that we could use it, but gold nanoparticles have a very good potential for aggregating. They bring about, there is even a visual change. When you see gold, normally all the ladies here would be wearing gold ornaments. And I saw a message, no voice. Can you hear me? Am I audible to everyone? Am I audible to everyone? I just saw a message saying, yeah, okay, thank you. So when you talk about gold, all the ornaments that you are wearing, they're all yellow in color, okay? And when you bring these nanoparticles, you bring gold to the level of nanoparticles, it assumes colors like magenta, it becomes deep red in color, and it's so beautiful to see these nanoparticles form. In the moment you change the morphology of these, whether they are not shaped, they're sphere, again you will see, because the RI would change with the particles. So it's an interdisciplinary research area, but it can be modified, tailor-made to the requirements. It's just how creatively you can think and how well you can bring the chemistry together. So I, being basically a chemist by heart, I always try to use chemistry for controlling these particles, but it is a wonderful technology which can be used by everybody. It has been used in developing vaccines, the siRNA and these vaccines which are coming into use. Now nanoparticles are also being considered for developing vaccines. The nasal spray which is due to come for children below the age of 12 could be having a component of the nanoparticles. Anyways, they are aerosols, so aerosols come into the colloidal state. When for surface disinfection, you have been using a lot of sprays, body disinfection, for hand sanitizers, masks which have got silver nanoparticles, copper nanoparticles impregnated in it. So we have this all material which is being used. They all showed properties for different applications, but look at the beauty of the repurposing, that it came in very handy when we had to put a curve on the COVID-19. So this technology in the PPEs which you are wearing, the personal protective equipment which the doctors were wearing, they were coated with different type of material. My institute was among the first institutes which was given the license by Ministry of Textile to start testing for the PPEs. And I can tell you that when we started in 2020, when there were no PPE testing manufacturers here, the making of PPEs was such a big deal, and the kind of PPE, different levels of PPE which were required were not there. And today it is such a proud moment that in 6 months, India was able to reach to the level of developing textile fabrics requirements of PPE for different grades, for the first line workers, for the police people who were working, for frontline workers, for people who were working with the patients at home. There could be so many variations were brought about within a time frame of 6 to 8 months. And this is all about technology, medicine, knowledge coming together. So magnetic nanoparticles, polymeric nanoparticles, quantum dots, these are different particles which have been used in different forms of aerosols, which are used for giving the medicines during the COVID-19 treatment. So this just shows that how your technology which you have developed is evolving to address the needs of the future. So basically, these technologies are making us sustainable. Just imagine if you didn't have these material with you, if you didn't have an understanding of this technology, you didn't understand why this technology and where this technology. Every time we were talking about COVID-19, it was keeping a distance, it was falling on the surfaces, it was contaminating the surfaces, and we had to cover huge surfaces. When we are talking about huge surfaces, I am talking about, just imagine the extent of a COVID-19 hospitals. You have beds, you have mattresses, you have all the upholstery which is there, you have the patients, you have the equipment. When I was an administrator in one of the COVID-19 hospitals, even a tab which was being used in the ICU for monitoring the patient's condition, it was so scary when the tab used to come back that I don't know, all care was taken, but what kind of contamination would it have caught from the air, from on its surface? So we were literally cleaning these things with the in-house made disinfectants and surface agents, which we knew as scientists that this has a good surface area and it covers this much of area. It is able to provide this type of antibacterial activity. Many of my colleagues developed very quick solutions. They were easy solutions. We made pocket sanitizers. We made pen sanitizers. Pen sanitizers are nobody, I think people in these cities where the high-rise buildings are there would understand that when you are living in a high-rise building, you are using a lift without your awareness, you are constantly in a lift and you are pressing the buttons. When you're talking about any disease which can be spread through a touch, just imagine the potential of a lift infecting, and that is where the pen sanitizers came in very handy. The pen sanitizers tip were releasing antibacterial, antimicrobial things on the button. You were not touching it. So you were not even touching it and you were making it safe for the other person to use. Pocket sanitizers, every time you can't carry a bottle of sanitization with you. I have a pen sanitizer which is hanging in my name ID. And these pocket sanitizers can be carried very well in your back pockets of your pants and the front pockets. So you have it everywhere. So these are some of the immediate applications which nanotechnology and nano-based materials had when it was brought to the surface disinfection. I could go on, but let's go to the next slide because I think we are also completing the time. These are another areas. There was not a single area of COVID-19 treatment plan where the nanotechnology was not used. First was, as I said, the virus detection. Second was transmission, using of these nanoparticles in the nanomask fibers, post nanofibers, and electrospun fibers incorporated with the nanoparticles which are capable of antibacterial action. They are controlling the transmissions to a great extent. Then using aerosols for giving medicines directly into the lungs, because lungs were one of the organs which was greatly impacted during the COVID-19. Breathing was one of the biggest issues which people were facing. Then in the PCR was made extensively useful by using these available technologies for improving the diagnosis, reducing the time and giving you fast results with accuracy. Then the treatment and pathogenesis, which involved different small molecules which were created. So all in all, the technology showed the impact it would create and the time frame in which it could create the impact very fast during the COVID-19 plan. And this, in fact, gave an impetus to the use of this technology also. So let's see what are the challenges and for the future of nanotechnology. So I would say that I have made a slide regarding advantage, disadvantages, but I would not like to go through it because everything has some disadvantage, but you have to always weigh from the point of view what is more beneficial, whether the advantages, it outgoes the disadvantages, or the outreach of the advantages is more than the disadvantages. You need to work on it. You need to do research on it. You need to develop it. If the disadvantages are much higher on the outreach, that is when you have to, shelve the technology. So I feel that nanotechnology has a lot of potential. Many of it has been used in different areas, but the technology still can be used for making it more and more comprehensive, more and more precise. And it is not only, and you know, every technology has a direct and indirect relationship. So the way this technology is bringing about a change in the electronics, communications, lithium-ion batteries, which got a Nobel Prize, that is also based on some part of, this is a nanomaterial which was developed and has been used. And lithium-ion battery, I am giving you a presentation through the laptop, would not have been possible if the lithium-ion batteries had not come into existence. But just imagine, lithium-ion batteries have been in use for such a long time. But they got a recognition in the form of a Nobel Prize as is, I think, 2016. So any technology takes time to evolve, but yes, with the development in the technology and the framework and the infrastructure and some pain points like COVID-19, some technologies get recognition fast. So what is now, what is the dream when we talk about the dream of global healthcare equivalency? In terms of nanotechnology, nanomedicine, we are now trying to bridge all this by using artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is one level further than what we are doing. And machine learning and artificial intelligence are now becoming an integral part of using any technology, because using your brain, these technologies can develop algorithms which can give you results of the combinations and permutations, which will take years of research work and bench work to get. So you use your brain to design an algorithm for utilizing the data which you have generated with your previous research activities, and create a database for making fine-tuning the material which is there. So basically, through nanotechnology, nanomedicine, integration with MI/LL, what we are trying to do is we are trying to make the healthcare system not only country-wise equivalent, but the idea is to bring about the dream is, I would say, till 2030, we'll have to see how it comes out. But the dream is to bring about a global healthcare equivalency in the healthcare sector throughout the world. So you have some developed nations which are far ahead, but yes, the others are now catching pace with these new technologies coming in. Now, when I started off with the SDG goals, and if I end my presentation without bringing to your notice India's roadmap for attaining these sustainable development goals, which are specifically related to the healthcare industries, then I think I would be leaving you less informed in at least one area. So this is the SDG 3, that is the Sustainable Development Goal as per the United Nations, and India's overall, index and scores which are there. In healthcare, we are at 52. That is the index score of 52. So we are almost at the halfway mark, and we still have 8 to 9 years to reach 2030. So I am hoping that by 2030, this SDG 3 in terms of India's indexing score should be really reaching to a good level. And the good health and well-being, where the focus has been, as I said, tuberculosis, which is not a problem in many other countries, but it still remains a big problem in India. That is one of the key areas which comes under the sustainable growth. Maternal deaths and neonatal deaths is another area which has been the focus for developing the SDG 3 in India. And India has, it has brought down the mortality rate for children under 5 to a good extent. And what we plan to achieve in 2030 is yet to be seen. So basically, a lot of Ayushman Bharat, there are different schemes. If you talk about things with the Prime Minister is trying to do currently, they are just he is actually trying to make the country sustainable. We have things, we have resources, we have the manpower, we have the brain power, we have all kind of resources with us, but it's just the disconnect which is not allowing the country to be sustainable. So through all these different aspects of different schemes, different policies which are being carried out, the idea is to make India sustainable, and specifically so in the healthcare industry, with different government policies and education policies, changes in the sectors, the focus areas. We are just trying to make this particular healthcare industry more self-sustained, and with this and this, it is a very painful reminder, but such pandemics which come in are actually reminders of your self-esteem. You become very, very proud, and you are ignorant of the fact that you cannot always reach out to people. During this pandemic, what we learned is that the best results came from what we had inside. Whatever had to be brought out from outside could not be, was big. You can talk about oxygen, which was creating a big problem. Leave apart the politics, but just think about the fact that after this pandemic, we are now, DRDO is also contributing in the establishment of oxygen generating plants. We had these oxygen generating plants for combat aircrafts, which are there. So a modification has been made in those plants, and it is now being used for generating oxygen at the local levels in hospitals. And DRDO is playing a big role in providing oxygen generating plants in different parts of the country around. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong with the figures, but I think more than 300 plants are being set up at different places for generating oxygen. That was one need which could not be managed internally, and we had to depend on others. So there was no sustainability in the process we were following, and that we really paid dearly for that particular aspect of it. Similarly, it was good, you see the medical, you can't ask for help when everyone is in the need of, when everybody needs it. People look after their own thing. So the idea of developing a sustainable healthcare system is to keep yourself self-contained, use the resources in a way so that it is available not only to us, but for the coming generations. We are able to leave this place, this earth, in a form where the resources are available for them to further modify it, further make it, enhance it for utilization for years and generations together. So that should be the goal. And this is the current rating. I think you are from different states, so you can see where your state stands in terms of the SDG 3. If you have any attendees from Kerala, then they can pat their backs and clap for themselves. With Kerala being the highest in this index score in terms of the healthcare sector, how it has fared out for this particular growth. And indicators, as I was speaking on the previous slide, these are some of the indicators to assess the performance for the SDG goal 3 in India. And the lowest is Uttar Pradesh, where I am sitting, but I am sure that by 2030, and with the way changes are taking place, we should also reach to a good extent. But Kerala is doing extremely well, wonderful work there. So in India, when we are talking about technology, the use of technology in healthcare during COVID-19, this is how I would say that we use the different technologies at different levels for managing the COVID-19 pandemic. And the key themes were that we had the doctors available, we had information regarding the COVID-19 available to us. We had the AI, big data analytic algorithms, which were giving us, predicting the way the pandemic was going to flare up or come down. And the role of telemedicine and the role for apps for healthcare delivery right to the level in the hand of a person became very, 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 very effective when this pandemic came. Because on mobile, people were looking for data for hospital availability, bed availability, patient, where we could take, where are the ambulances, where are oxygen cylinders, everything people were trying to see on the net. So just imagine what the role of technology has started becoming in managing the healthcare sector. And when you were talking, and all these apps which we have, there is a big need for now mental health care well-being apps to be available. During this pandemic, people, I don't know how many number of people went through such trauma times, and trauma never shows you a pathological mark. It shows you the impact of a trauma become visible in a person years down the line. And depression is something which creates problems with you. And this COVID-19 pandemic has raised the need for having mental health apps available. People don't want to go to doctors to share their problems because they feel it is a weakness or it's the society that takes it like that. But this is where a big need is required, that how we can address these issues as well. So that is where technology will come in a big way as we move along. So I hope I have been able to make this session interesting for even people who have nothing to do with biology and life sciences, but have somehow understood the requirements of sustainable development in this particular healthcare industry. And at the end, I am so thankful to Dr. Sharma for reaching out to me to make this presentation and interacting with intellectuals like all of you who are producing the future generations of the country, out of which I think a lot of them might even become scientists. So you are actually making their brain, you are giving them the brain power to bring about a change in future development. So Dr. Sharma, thank you very much to you for inviting me over, and to your entire college for giving an opportunity, all the organizing team members for coordinating the session for me, and my director at INMAS and DRDO at large for organization which has given me immense understanding about no boundaries. The organization tells you there are no boundaries, and the motto and the what we call out from DRDO in our logo, it is written Balasya Moolam Vigyan. That is, strength comes from science. And I am very proud to be a part of an organization which has shown the strength which it has developed through science during the past 2 years. So thank you very much. And just to end with this is a compilation of some of the internet sources I could find. So this is nothing which is in particular related to any DRDO work. So thanks a lot. Thank you for your patient listening. I am not aware, I can't see you, but I am sure that you would have heard it, and I would just request you people that please take your health very seriously. Everything comes in second. You should be focusing on health, and please try to create a very sustainable healthcare scenario in your house, in your environment, in your ecosystem, because that is where, you know, things are going to matter in the long term. All else will come into place if these things are taken care of. So thank you very much, Dr. Anu, and if I remember, Dr. Bhaskar was initially hosting, and I give it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time. So, ma'am, as you said earlier, that my topic is not relevant to your FDP, but it is not, because we are able to do work if we are healthy.
Correct.
And you told us various aspects of healthcare, and present scenario in India, so which is very informative for all of us. And thank you very much, ma'am, for your knowledgeable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So can I log out?
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you,
ma'am.
everyone. Thanks for the patient listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And thanks all the participants for your support and patience. I have shared the link in the chat box. Please fill it. And now there is a session is over, and tomorrow we will start the session at 9:30 a.m. Please join the session before 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you.